Hey guys, it's me Ali from Team Hoshi Gumi, here to give you my deck profile on my Thavas deck, which I just came back from today of winning in the top 4 in Dynasty Cup for the 2v2 match. My teammate was one of our teammate players, Yun Zheng, who played the new Neo Nectar stuff that came from post Zoo Booster, and he did pretty well. Honestly, he carried me with him. I didn't do so well because I was still a little new to Thavas, and also the deck isn't entirely complete, but I still made it to top 4 with him. So I'm going to give you here my deck list profile of what I had at the tournament, and then I will also tell you what I would have done to what I could have done differently and what units I could have used to complete it. So starting from grade 0, here we have Kelpie Rider, Miris. Oh no, Mitros or Mitros. And this is the best starter you want to use for Aquaforce, or specifically, Thavas, because with him on your third attack of your Vanguard, he goes into Soul. You call any Thavas grade 3, and then at the end of the turn, that Sabbath grade 3 gets added to your hand. So free Stride Fodder, and if you would do it right, you can have it set up for Megidos, the Zeroth Dragon. Okay, next up. Next, we got 4 heal triggers, specifically the Blue Wave from GBT 13. The best heal trigger you want to run, in fact, they're doing the same exact heal trigger, specifically the effect, where once she goes into the drop zone from calling a G-Guard, you take another copy of her, bind the 2, and then either counter or soul charge. This is an extremely great generic card for every clan to use. You always want to run 4 of her. Completely takes out all generic heal triggers. Alright. Uh, and most of these heal triggers from different clans are having certain subclan names, so you can use them in the subclan or in your generic decks. So that's pretty great. Next, we got 4 supersonic sailors, obviously, and a very important card to use in Thavas, since you counterblast a lot, and putting them into Soul, you countercharge. This was very helpful for me as well in the Dynasty Cup. Next, 4 Petros, the Thavas critical trigger, where once it goes into Soul, it gives your Vanguard 5,000 and you draw. This is a great card to use, especially in Thavas, because here's a little combo. You want to have this in front and this in the back. This gives you an 11k attack towards, a 9k attack towards your opponent's Vanguard if you can do that, specifically if you have a Malikia to give it its power, or you can attack your opponent's rear. The key thing about Thavas is you want to get multiple attacks in, whether they hit or not, or how small they are, and if they attack the Vanguard or rear guard. That's the important thing about Thavas. And then once you do that, it goes in the Soul, and then you can move this into the Soul of your Vanguard and call out a Thavas next to the spot where the Petros was. Completely opens up a free rear. Next, you got 4 draw triggers of Battle Siren Malikia. Very great Battle Siren draw trigger to have, because with this, you call her, move her in the Soul, give 3,000 to any of your units. It's a great power builder for your units, especially if you use it on Tidal Assault, where once he has plus 12,000, he'll be able to attack your opponent's Vanguard. Obviously, he gets minus 5,000, but in the deck, you manage to give it a lot more power boost. So, yeah, you'll understand exactly why that's good. All right, now we're moving on to grade 1s, and here we got 4 copies of Ocean Keeper Plateau, the countercharging PG, a classic in the beginning of all G series. Definitely want to use this. I don't know if the Blue Wave PG is usable in Thavas. Maybe it is, but you want to go with this because of how it countercharges. So yeah, this is a really good card you always want to have for Thavas. Next, you have 4 copies of the Stride Fodder for Thavas. Good card to have, obviously, and you know this is just too self-explanatory. Next, we got 4 copies of Battle Siren Millennia. A great grade 1 card. This card is only specific to Thavas, so you can't use it in other decks. When she attacks for the third time or more, you counterblast 1, give her plus 5,000, making her 12k attacker, and you draw. And if you restand her after you use her for the third attack, you can attack her again and use her skill to draw again. But you can't stack the 5,000. The 5,000 only stays until the end of the battle, which means after the third attack, her power goes back to 7, and then you have to counterblast again in order to give her the power and draw again. Next up, we got 3 Dragon Rider Dinos. Now, this was basically a substitute I was using. The reason why he was a good substitute was because he has resist if you have a grade 3 Thavas. But if you don't have that resist all the time, it's hard. But he still pulls through for me. His other effect is when you support him with a unit on either the first or fourth battle, you Soul Blast 1, and your opponent chooses one of the units to retire. Now, obviously, it's decent, but it's not that good because if your opponent chooses what to retire, obviously it's hard. Especially if you just use 1 to retire and your opponent has a big field, because Thavas isn't all about like retiring. What you really want to use instead was, sorry, this is a bit stuck. There we go. What you really want to use instead is 3 Battle Sirens Orpheus. With this card, once it supports, you counterblast, Soul Blast, and restand the unit it supports with minus 5,000. Now, that sounds bad if you're supporting a 9k, but the idea is the 9k unit you have or 11k is given power because of your strides, and then you support it with her, and then obviously it becomes a much more decent card. And the best part is she has resist. Resist is automatic, continuous, does not need any restrictions. So yeah, you want to run 3 of her and replacing Dinos. Now we are moving on to grade 2s. Now you're going to want 4 Battle Siren Scipias. Some people are running 3, that's optional. I personally like to run 4 because her effect is great and her resist and your continuous skill is great too. So if you have a Thavas grade 3, she will automatically have resist and 11,000 to power. And that is absolutely great. I don't need to tell you why. And then on the second or third attack, you attack with her. She gets plus 3,000, and and you draw. Now, the best thing about the plus 3,000 is, so she'll be at 11k with her continuous skill, and the plus 3,000 puts her at 14,000. And if she's supported by a 7k unit, basically here, here, or here, she will be at 21. Really makes things exciting, and definitely a good thing you could use in terms of your of this card. Specifically boosting aspect, but you got the picture. Okay. Next, we got 4 Tidal Assaults. Now, the interesting thing about Tidal Assault is his effect makes him seem like a small fry, but thanks to strides, you can use him just right and perfectly. And early game wise, it is still great to use him. So once he attacks your opponent's Vanguard, and only the Vanguard, you restand him, but he gets minus 5,000, putting him at 4,000. The key to use him is you have to put him behind at least a 5k unit, specifically in early game unit. If you put him behind a 5k unit, he attacks, he restands, and the next attack with the support of this unit, he gets to be 9k. Now that's early game wise if your opponent is at grade 7 is at grade 1 or 2, where their Vanguard is at 7,000 or 9,000. Now if you're facing your opponent who has like an 11k Vanguard, you want to put him behind a 7k. Now obviously the idea in that is you attack, he restands minus 4,000, and then that becomes 11k attack. A great thing about him is when you attack with him, you want to attack your opponent's rear guard because he has to restand when you attack the Vanguard. It's not a choice. So you attack your opponent's rear guard, they either guard or get rid of it, and then once you restand him with your strides, which give him a mega power boost, he'll either get plus 10 or more, depending which stride you use. And then once he attacks, he gets minus 5,000 and still be able to attack the Vanguard. And a really great card for both early game and late game. Now, the final of the grade 2, and a real cutie. Don't worry, Scipia, you are also just as cute, as well as you other Battle Sirens. Anyways, Battle Siren Adelaide. Look at this sweet girl. So what she does is when you call her, you counterblast 1 Soul Blast, and she gets plus 2,000. And once per turn, after she attacks the Vanguard, she restands. So she's basically Thavas, except you have to counterblast, and she gets plus 11, and she doesn't even get minus power. It's really great. Now, obviously, the same way as Thavas, you want to attack her at a rear guard and then restand her with a stride in order for her to give her Mundo power. So that way, when she restands, she'll still have a great deal of power. Now we are on to grade 3s. Very simple. You got 2 of the OG Thavas because this deck is mostly Thavas required. For instance, Scipia, Millennia's, Adelaide, and I think Orthia. I might be wrong. No, I'm wrong in that. I don't think Orthia is Thavas required. Anyways, and then the critical and the starter. You wanna make sure you always have good ride, specifically with the Thavas name, and his stride skill is actually decent. I believe on the 4th battle or more. No, sorry, wrong one. When this unit attacks. Okay, so on the 4th battle, you choose 3 of your opponent's rear guards and they retire it. That's actually pretty decent, you know, in terms of stats. So it's not entirely bad. At least it gives you something. Finally, you run 4 of the new Supreme Ruler of the Storm, Thavas. Very important you use him because his GB2 skill is as a rear guard. Once he attacks on the 1st or 4th battle, you counterblast 1 and restand him. He keeps his 11k and acts as that. And his stride skill made him extremely great for the meta. Once you stride, you call a unit from your hand. You can either call a unit from your hand or don't. Choose a unit on your field and give that unit resist. And if the unit has the wave ability, very important you pay attention to this, if the unit has the wave ability, they can attack from the back row. Now, if it doesn't have the wave ability, they can't. So if you gave the skill to Tidal, he will get resist, but he will not be able to attack from the back row. That's very important that you all understand that, because I kind of fucked up a bit at Dynasty Cup, where I cheated a bit, but I didn't realize. The guy didn't call it out, so I won that one, but I felt very guilty about it. I'm a very honest person, so I want to play as fair and square as I can, and you know, it sucks that happened. Anyways, alright, so that is the main deck. So now we want to move on to the strides. The strides are the main important key of how to do of what makes this deck just as great. So we're gonna start at a basic 1 Sea Breeze. You obviously want to run 1 Sea Breeze. It's a very great card to use in GB restricted decks, and especially tournament wise. And next we got the G guards for 1 Dismal. Now, in the idea build I had for a complete deck, I actually wasn't going to run Dismal. My ideal was running 4 G guards, but the tournament today showed me how important Dismal was, because if I didn't have him, I wouldn't have won one of my matches, and now I realize just how important he is and why I should definitely have 5 G guards in this deck. So yeah, running 1 Dismal is very important for this deck. Next, you got 1 Ionius. Very great card, and only 1 you need. He flips one of your you flip one of your G units, select up to 5 of your rear guards, give them resist, and they cannot be targeted from attacks. That's right? Yeah, they cannot be hit. And he gets 5,000 for each rear guard you chose. If you choose 5, he gets plus 25. If you choose any of the numbers, specifically each one counts as 5. That's the great thing. Next, we got 4 of the Blue Wave Armor Galifila. Great G-Guard for this deck. So, when you guard with her on the 2nd or 3rd wave, she gets plus 5,000. You use her a lot, and it's very important you do, because her act skill on your turn is you Soul Blast 1, place her face down so you can reuse her as a G guard, and choose any card on your field and flip it. Specifically, you flip either your rear guards that are locked, your vanguard that was deleted, and if you're on stride and your heart card is deleted, you can still flip that while on your stride. I checked; it is possible. Or you can choose one of the cards in your damage zone that are face down and flip it up. Essentially, you countercharge. A great card for the Thavas deck, or any Aqua Force deck you use. Finally, for G guards, you got the Barrier Ice Dragon. Great card. You don't use them as much as you hope to because your opponent attacks with their rear guards a lot. So on the first or fourth wave, he basically gets plus 10,000 just like that, making him 36 shield. No, sorry, 25 shield, and essentially making your Vanguard 36 shield, 36 guard essentially. Now again, it's hard to use him because the opponents mostly attack with the rear, and even if and also they usually end their attack on their third, since like the current meta is mostly control decks. But you know there are still better chances of you using him. Dismal, you don't use him as often, but you definitely want to keep him there just in case. Now you only need to run 2 Gallifas. I'm running 3 right now just to fill the G zone until I get the rest of the cards in the mail. But yeah, you only need 2 because you'll be able to flip her back down, so it's not really needed. Anyways, now we're on to the main of the G units. Now, 2 Lambros. Now, I know you guys have heard of Alexandros, but you definitely want to still run at least 2 Lambros in order to use him once. So if you have a face-up G unit in your G zone, he will be your first stride because he will give your units 10,000 for the ones that stand, whereas Alexandros only gives 5,000 for each, and you have to counterblast. He does not require a counterblast. So obviously, you want to use him as your first stride if you have a face-up G unit. Next up, we got 3 Alexandros. Now, I actually want to run 4. You can run 3, but I feel like 4 is the perfect safety net for this. So his skill, when he attacks on the second or third wave, you counterblast 1, flip any of your G units. You want to flip Galifa because then you can prepare to use her skill to either countercharge or flip one of your locked units or Vanguard. You could flip Seabreeze just in case you want to hold on to the Gallifas, but I've been flipping the Gallifas anyway. And he gives you choose 2 of your units and stand them, and they get 5,000 for each face-up G unit. Now you can still choose a standing unit, and it won't be able to restand because it's already stand, but it will still gain the power. That's a very important thing to note for Alexandros. Another important thing to note: his effect only goes off at the end of the battle. So after you do your trigger checks is then when you restand your units. Now the great thing about that is that so when you do your trigger checks, you can wait to figure out which ones to stand and then see what your trigger lineup ends up being, and then you decide what to stand. Very, very convenient for that kind of matter. All right, next up you run 2 Storm Dominator Commander Thavas. This card is basically a backup. It's something you want to use in case you have no counterblast and you wouldn't be able to do a 4th wave attack with Lambos, or you've already used Lambros. He's basically your safety stride. Essentially, you flip a copy of him, choose one of your rear guards. They can attack from the back, and they gain plus 5,000. And then when he attacks on the 4th wave or more, on the 4th wave only, choose 3 of your opponent's rear guards, and then your opponent chooses which one to retire. It's actually pretty good. Again, it's just a safety net, so you don't really want to use him as often. Next up, 1 Wailing Thavas. Now, you could run 2. That's a good safety net, but I'm going to run 1 because I want to make sure I run 5 G guards. Because running 5 G guards is actually going to be very important when I show you this last stride. So, Wailing Thavas, a very great card to have. You must have at least 1, because for each attack your rear guards have made, once he attacks, you counterblast 1, and he gains 5,000 for each attack your rear guard made. Note that when he attacks, he does not count himself, so you won't get 5,000 once he attacks for himself. And your opponent cannot guard with grade 1 units, so they have to rely purely on their grade 0s or their grade 2s. And also his GB3 skill is once he attacks, for each rear guard that attacked, your opponent chooses up to the numbers of attacks and retires their rear guards. So if you attack twice with rear guards, they have to retire up to 2. If it's 5 rear guards, they basically retire their whole field. Really, really great card. Next, and finally, you want to run the Ultimate Stride Megiddo. Now, you don't have to. He's very expensive, so I can understand those who question of wanting to run him. He is actually a gamble card, but his skill it really pays off. Now, I want to like just stress out the current strats I've shown you. They are pretty good enough to make your Thavas deck great. He is basically a last resort insurance or finisher. He's basically a triple threat. So with this skill, you once you stride him, you counterblast 2 and call for up to 5 units from your hand or drop zone. The called units get plus 5,000, and then after a unit attacks, they get to switch places with another. But that's a once per turn skill, so use that carefully. And the skill can even go off even if you attack your opponent's rear guards. A little tip. So say you have a unit on your field. You can't give that unit the plus 5,000 or the effect to switch places, but you can you can stride on with your Supreme Ruler Thavas. Use his stride skill to call something from your hand that you aren't going to use for Megiddo, and put that unit into your drop zone. Then you'll be able to use it for Megiddo, because the 2 skills go off the same time. You want to use the Thavas stride skill first, and then Megiddo. Then you are all set to use as many rear guards. The best rear guards that work with him are the ones that will have 11k. You don't want to use title as much unless you actually have to, because it's the only way. Excuse me. But yeah, you really want to be very careful on how you use Megiddo. Now, the downside of Ultimate Strides, if your opponent manages to survive your Ultimate Stride, all of your stride units are gone. You can't use them for the entire turn because they basically burn them away. If you haven't seen the anime, I suggest you do, because they make it much clearer about how that whole thing works. Only difference is you don't actually have to burn your cards unless you're that hardcore of a Vanguard player. Anyways, that's my deck list for Thavas. I hope I didn't ramble on too long. That's what I won with in top 4 with DMV, even though my teammate is carried me along the way. So really look into making the changes I made or planning to make, and yeah, hope you guys have fun. Please subscribe to Team Hoshi Gumi. Goodbye, everyone.